Hello everyone, my name is AndrewAJT, and today I'm going to talk about how to nerf Steve in Smash Ultimate with the rule set, rather than actually nerfing him in-game or banning him. Now, there was a tweet I made recently, or a thread, that talked about Steve being broken and some ways to address this, and the tweet actually kind of blew up, so I wanted to give my thoughts in a more expanded manner today in a video format. The first thing I will say is Steve is incredibly broken. I'm one of the biggest Steve haters in the world, but you should not hate Steve players. If Steve is illegal and there's no restrictions on him, you can't blame anyone for using him. I mean, that just makes total sense to main the best character in the game. I'm not a Steve main. My Steve is really bad. I just do not click with the character whatsoever when I try to play him. But if he's a legal character, you can't blame anyone for wanting to use him. So blame the game, not the player. So I want to explain briefly why Steve is so broken, because I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about it. I'm not a Steve expert, so I will try my best to explain, but if anyone has any corrections, feel free to let me know in the comments. But essentially, Steve is broken for a really large list of reasons. The biggest one, in my opinion, and the most simple, is that he is one of the most difficult characters to approach in the entire game. Probably the most difficult character by far, I would say, actually, because he can just put these blocks down at any time and essentially create like a little home for himself. And it's very hard to get through these blocks because at any moment Steve is just waiting for you to F-smash you or hit you through them. And you would say, well, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not going to approach him. But you can't do that. You have to approach him in the most cases because he is constantly mining. And the mining essentially makes him stronger and allows him to get all these very powerful tools. One of the tools he can get is Diamond, which is just absolutely incredibly powerful. I mean, this Diamond back air, it auto-cancels on a short hop, and it's basically the power of an aerial smash attack. I mean, you see it it's getting close to killing Samus at literally 42. It's so powerful, it auto-cancels. His F-smash is also just incredibly powerful. All his moves are really powerful. His down air is like a projectile, and that almost killed Samus at 106 after the hit. His up smash is incredibly good. It's a multi-hit, but it's very reliable, unlike most multi-hits in this game. So he is slow, and he does have bad jumps, but he has a burst option, which is, I'd say, the best burst option in the game, Minecart. Another incredibly powerful move, and not only that, but it also doubles as a command grab. You can minecart people, and then they get stuck in this, and then you go here and spike them. So it's like you can't even just shield it either, because it's also a command grab, so you always have to be mindful of that. So a character that also kills this early, he has incredible damage racking capabilities. He basically has, I'm not good at it, so I'm not going to demonstrate, but he basically, with his up tilt and blocks, has a basically guaranteed 0 to 65 combo on most characters. So he kills you really early, and he also gets 65% roughly from one interaction at 0. And just in general, his moves just don't have a lot of lag. He can just spam the heck out of most of his moves. That's really just the basics. I mean, there's so many other broken things about Steve. He does have flaws. His jumps are poor, and he's overall kind of slow. But it really doesn't matter because he's not the one having to chase you down. You're always approaching him, so it doesn't matter that he's slow, especially because, again, he has the best burst option in the game, in my opinion. He also has a couple advanced techniques. One is planking. You can essentially, I don't think I'm able to do it, but you essentially can put blocks under the ledge and mine against the stage, just right up against the stage. Now you can actually lose general resources doing this because the crafting table will spawn and it will fall on the blocks that you spawn as platforms, but it does allow you to get things like gold and diamond by mining against the stage. And normally in Ultimate, when you grab the ledge twice before touching the ground, you don't get invincibility the second time and every time after that. But Steve, because he technically is able to land off stage on the blocks, he actually does get invincibility back. And he can basically plank with up airs and all that. And it's incredibly difficult to deal with this. In fact, many characters just cannot deal with this whatsoever. This is actually banned in some tournaments already. He also has a technique called PMLG, which is a very complicated technique where essentially he can cancel some hit stun during combos, or survive longer than he normally would. It's a pretty confusing technique, and I'm not going to try to explain it, but this character is completely busted. So you might ask, well, was Steve ever nerfed in-game? Because, you know, previous Smash games have actually nerfed the best characters in the game. Unfortunately, it's not widely played, but the PAL version of Melee actually significantly nerfs Fox. And in Smash 4, the final version of the game that was actually played actually has major nerfs to Bayonetta. Now, unfortunately, those nerfs did not go far enough, and Bayo is still the best character in that game, but at least they tried nerfing her, and they did make some significant changes to her to make her harder to optimize. But Steve essentially got little to no nerfs. I think he got one tiny change to his up smash, which barely affects anything. In general, a lot of the best characters in this game, when the game was newer, Ike, Pichu, Palutena, Wolf, they got nerfed through patches, and they're still good characters, they're just a little more balanced now. But unfortunately, some of the later characters in Smash Ultimate, Steve, Kazuya, characters like that, they did not get any significant nerfs because the game was just... Steve, for example, was not fully developed, his meta, before they stopped patching the game, and they don't make balance patches for this game, unfortunately, anymore. So Steve actually used to be banned in some tournaments, and the issue is that Nintendo will not necessarily issue a tournament license to a tournament that bans Steve. I think this has happened with a few tournaments already, so there is alternatives to this. Now, I don't know 100% sure if Nintendo would be okay with these alternatives. I guess you'd have to ask them. I'm not an expert on Nintendo's policies, but the alternative is to change the rule set to nerf Steve without actually doing any modifications to the game itself. Now, there is actually precedent for this. For example, in Brawl, now I actually used to play competitive Brawl, and it was actually the only game that I mained the best character. I've played all the games competitively, and Brawl was the only one where I mained the best character, which was Meta Knight, and Meta Knight is also incredibly broken in Brawl. However, Brawl is still played at a few tournaments, such as Supernova, which is the biggest Brawl tournament each year, and they actually had a very clever rule set to nerf Meta Knight in this tournament. So I will read the rule for you. The rule says that if one player or team has chosen Meta Knight when their opponent has not, previous stage selection procedure is ignored, and the player or team that has not selected Meta Knight will choose the stage to play on from any legal stage, ignoring stage strikes, bans, and prohibitions of selecting a stage previously won on during the set. So that sounds like a lot of technical jarble, but it essentially means that if you play Steve, or in this case Meta Knight, your opponent picks the stage every single game. They pick game one, they pick all your counter picks, they pick their counter picks. You don't get to ban any stages. Essentially, playing Meta Knight comes with the penalty of your opponent will always pick the stage, which is a pretty significant nerf to Meta Knight, I would say. I think he's still the best character in the game, even with that rule set. But if you have a least favorite stage, then your opponent could pick that stage every time. And if you have a favorite stage, you're never going to be able to play on it. So that's a pretty significant change to nerf Meta Knight, and this rule actually was pretty popular. They also had a rule with Ice Climbers, because Ice Climbers are ridiculous in that game, that Ice Climbers cannot be played on Final Destination whatsoever, which is a really cool rule set as well. You know, normally in a tournament set you have stage bans and strikes and counter picks, but these rules kind of change the game when it comes to that for these overpowered characters. So there is an alternative to this rule. The alternative would be to legalize some stages that are bad for Steve. Now, back in Brawl, some stages were very powerful for Meta Knight, like Rainbow Cruise, for example, was very powerful for Meta Knight. So actually, as time went on in Brawl, stages that favored Meta Knight were actually banned as the years went by. But kind of ironically, the opposite has happened in Ultimate. Not that Steve was around in the beginning of Ultimate, but as time has gone on in Ultimate, stages that are bad for Steve have been banned. So Meta Knight had stages banned that were good for him. Steve has been fortunate enough to have stages banned that are bad for him, so he's actually gotten more powerful with the newer rule sets. Although again, he was not around for some of those early stage rule sets, so it's kind of unintentional, but it's just funny how that worked out. So the alternative to the, stage selection rule would be to legalize stages like Lylat, and Yoshi's story, at least against Steve or maybe even in general. Steve does not like these two stages. The big one is slants. The slants do not agree with the blocks. You see there's slants on both sides of Yoshi's story, and these do not work well with the blocks, and they make Steve more vulnerable. These platforms are also very high up, and Steve generally does not like that because his short hop and full hop are very short. He can't even reach the top platform of Yoshi's story with a full hop and double jump. He has to use his air dodge, or of course he can use his blocks. And he may have some combos he can do off the platforms, don't get me wrong, but in general, this is a very bad Steve stage. He does not get good resources here. A lot of people might think this stage is too janky, but I don't think it's really that bad. For one thing, we play with hazards off in tournaments, so Randall, the cloud platform there, does not show up. Also, you don't have to worry about the fly guys as well, so they don't interfere, these guys. And the blast zones are not that crazy on this stage either. It's actually fairly reasonable in terms of the side blast zones, and yes, the ceiling is low, but it's similar to Small Battlefield, which is not too crazy. The only kind of janky thing is that it's a small ceiling, and then you have a top platform as well, so you can get some early KOs off the top platform, but it's really not that bad. I don't understand why most players hate this stage. I know I'm a Mario main, so I'm biased, but I really don't see why this stage is that bad, and I think it should be legal because Steve is not a fan of this stage. So here's Lylat as well. This stage also has two slants, and even these platforms are slanted, which is very bad for Steve. And in general, just another very, very bad Steve stage, which I think should be legal against Steve. Maybe it should just be legal in general, probably, but at the very least against Steve. And even if there is stage bans still, Steve would still be forced to use his bans most likely on these stages. Or you could combine the rules and make these stages legal and make it so that the opponent always picks the stage. But yeah, this stage, I actually don't like this stage personally. It was legal in previous Smash games, but I would certainly learn to like it if Steve was forced to play here. It's really not that crazy of a stage. If you turn hazards off, the ship does not sway back and forth, which was really the main annoying thing about this stage. The ledge can be a little janky, but as long as you know what you're doing, you should generally not have any problems. I really think this stage and Yoshi's story deserves another look. Also, in case I did not make it clear, I do think the techniques such as planking and the PMLG should just be outright banned. The planking is like the one thing in this game where I've fought people who are planking me as Steve, and it's just like, at least as Mario, I felt like there was literally nothing I could do to counter it. Like, Samus at least can jump over here, my other character, and like place the bombs down and contest it that way. But Mario's fireball, I can't show you on this stage, but like his fireball just barely does not reach Steve when Steve is like planking like right here. And there felt like there was literally nothing I could do. I mean, there is like, I could take a big risk to try to contest it, but it was very difficult and I lost when the Steve was planking. So those techniques should be banned, but I think we should experiment with some of these other rule sets with Steve. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you have more insight onto these stages, Yoshi's story and Lylat. If you're a Steve expert, let me know. Also, let me know if you like the idea of the Brawl Metaknight rule coming to Ultimate for Steve. And if you agreed with what I said, like the video and subscribe. Or even if you disagreed, let me know why in the comments. I'm open to all opinions, even if I disagree with them, as always. So thank you so much for watching. If you want to check out, I have a Mario guide recently I made, two-part series so far. I'll put that playlist in the description and end screen. And yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments and if you liked the video like this. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.